It's story time.
Puddle Lane, The Flying Saucer by Sheila McCullagh. Tessa Catchermouse was a little grey cat. She had white paws and white whiskers. She lived in a hole in a very old house. She lived there with her mother, whose name was Pegs, and her brother, whose name was Tim. A magician lived in the top room of the house. The rest of the house was empty. One day, Tessa climbed up a tree. She jumped onto the roof of the house. There was a window in the roof. The window was open. Tessa looked in through the window. The room was empty. There was no one there. There was a long pole leaning against the window. Tessa climbed down the pole. She ran across to the magician's chair. It was near a big table. Tessa jumped up onto the chair. She jumped from the chair to the table. There was a big saucer standing on the table. The saucer had strange red and green patterns on it. There were 2 words on the saucer, but Tessa couldn't read yet, so she didn't know what the words were. Tessa stepped into the saucer to have a better look at it. She didn't notice a little red button in the bottom of the saucer. She put her paw right on the button. The moment Tessa touched the button, the saucer flew up into the air. Tessa was excited. "It's a flying saucer!" she cried. "I wish it would fly somewhere." And at once the saucer flew out of the window. It flew over the roof and over the garden. The saucer flew over the streets. It flew over the houses in the town. The saucer flew on and on. At first, Tessa was very excited. She went to the rim of the saucer and looked at the houses below. "I'd like to stop for a bit," she said. "I'd like to look at the houses." But the saucer flew on and on. Tessa began to feel frightened. "Meow!" she cried. "I want to go home. I want to go back to the house." But the saucer flew on and on. The saucer flew over the park. It flew on over the river. "Meow!" cried Tessa. "I want to go home." But the saucer flew on and on. "Oh dear," cried Tessa. "I wish I was home." And she sat down on the little red button. The saucer spun round and round and round, and Tessa almost fell off. Then the saucer stopped spinning and started off again. The saucer flew back over the park. It flew back over the river. It flew back to the old house where Tessa lived. The saucer flew down to earth very slowly. It landed just outside the hole in the steps where Tessa lived. Tessa jumped out of the saucer, and the flying saucer flew up again, back to the attic where the magician lived. Pegs was just coming in under the garden gate as Tessa flew down in the saucer. "Tessa!" cried Pegs. "Where have you been?" "I've been for a ride," said Tessa, "but I'm so glad to be home." "I should think you are," said Pegs.